Oh, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. And welcome. It's good to see you. I'm happy to have you here. And if you regularly follow Midday with Reverend Don, you will know that if you type your questions or comments on whatever platform you happen to be watching on, they will show up here in my chat room and we can talk directly, which for me is my favorite part of this particular broadcast. I always enjoy seeing everyone. I enjoy speaking with everyone, and I hope that you enjoy it too. I apologize for being a couple of minutes late today. There was a slight technical hiccup, um, and but I got it fixed, and here I am. So I was going to continue talking today about the Parliament of the World's Religions, and I also hello to Melanie in the chat room. And Melanie was with us at the Parliament of the World's Religions. And among other things, she gave a presentation on the work of women with ritual. And it was wonderful to see Melanie, wonderful to get to spend time with her. And hello to Janet in the chat room. And hello to Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And I want to take a moment to plug my Patreon at revdonlewis.com. If you're interested in supporting my work, joining my Patreon is a wonderful way to do it. This Saturday, I will be doing a Patreon seminar on the subject of the Parliament. And if you are a member of my Patreon at the seminar level, you can attend that, or you can get a ticket at corellianpublishing.com for $25 and attend that way. Hello to Renee in the chat room. We are also, we have many other offerings at my Patreon, including the Monday night chat room, a monthly newsletter, which will be coming out probably tomorrow, and various other items that we offer. At the highest level, there's a monthly consultation, all sorts of different things that you can choose to sign up for if you like. Also at Corellian Publishing, we're having a sale at the moment of a variety of books and ebooks and videos, including our first degree paperback, our third degree paperback, our tarot videos, tarot with Reverend Don, and tarot reversals with Lady Crystal. There are also the Common Book of Witchcraft and Wicca, Corellian Regalia, all at half price. And you can get that price by using the special code, special with capital S. And it will give you half price on those particular items. And they are listed on my Facebook page and a number of other places. If you didn't get all of them in that quick run through, which I wouldn't expect that you did, but you can find them there. And we'll be running that special through the 4th of September. And yeah, this is some of what's going on with me. I also want to remind you I am available for readings if you're interested. And you can set up a reading by contacting me at by contacting me at donlewishp@aol.com or through instant message at Facebook or Instagram. And I hope everyone is having a lovely day. We are going to continue our conversation about the Parliament. And hello to Kazan in the chat room. And, you know, Parliament is always a fascinating experience. And I've been to a good number of them now. I was in Melbourne, I was in Salt Lake City, I was in Toronto, and of course I was just in Chicago. And everyone has had a distinctly different character. And there's always much to praise and always some complaints that people will have, because that's the nature of any event. There are always things that you see in hindsight. Hello to Michael in the chat room. It's good to see you, Michael. But I think overall it's a wonderful experience. It's very transformative. And, you know, I have to say, I think also one of the most important aspects of each of these parliaments that I've mentioned has been the location. The fact that it's a different location, frequently on a different continent. Hello to Kai in the chat room. Kai also is there with us at Parliament, and Kai did some wonderful work while she was there. Um, but I remember in particular being very impressed with Salt Lake City, with its architecture, um, with the things that it had to offer. We took a train ride around the city while we were there to see more than city center, and that was quite fascinating. The land itself is very different from places I have lived, so that was fascinating to see. Australia obviously was very different in many ways. Um, Interestingly enough, in Australia, we had the best sushi meal we have ever had. One day for lunch, we stopped at the food court of a casino across from our hotel. And, it was just kind of a mall food court. And it had a sushi restaurant in it. Uh, Carry out sushi, takeaway sushi. It was just a counter. And we figured, this is either going to be the worst we've ever had or the best. And it turned out it was the best. We were utterly amazed. Um, of course, it was right on the waterfront. It was immensely fresh. It was beautifully made. Um, and one of the things that I remember most about the Melbourne Parliament, um, the Kai says, I love the comfy couches in all the hallways of Toronto. They really inspired lots of interfaith talks with random strangers. I completely agree, Kai. There were some sitting places at this Parliament, but they did not seem to me to function as well. Toronto really did a good job of creating those spaces to just randomly rest and talk with people. Um, it, um, I think that was one of the high points of the Toronto Parliament. Um, I'd also have to say that the Indigenous programming in Toronto was the best that I have seen so far. And hello to Raven in the chat room. It's good to see you, Raven. Here in Chicago, there were many good things. I spent a lot of my time in the among the booths that the different groups had, which is often what I do. But I also went into the breakout rooms. I went to a few of the presentations. I spent a lot of time on the floor, either talking with people or just people watching, and it was quite interesting. Um, it it definitely had a Chicago feel to it. And what do I mean by that? Chicago calls itself the city of big shoulders. One of the things I think is very emblematic of Chicago is a focus on practicality. Um, and I would have to say I did feel that was a characteristic of this Parliament. Um, Everything was arranged to get things done. And, McCormick Center is a beautiful place. It was a beautiful event. And like I say, it seemed very much set up to get it done, which is what Chicago tends to be all about. The view of the lake was wonderful. The fighting for freedom ritual, I think, may have been one of my greatest highlights of the event. It was a beautiful ritual, beautifully executed, with the lake as a backdrop, and such good feeling among all of the pagans and non-pagans who were attending. And after the ritual, there was dancing, and um, it continued in a very positive way until we needed to leave. It was just beautiful. Selena Fox, I believe, did a walkabout video after that ritual, where she talks with different people and just gives a very definite flavor of what it was like to be there. And it was a wonderful, positive experience. There were a lot of wonderful, positive experiences. Um, I've spoken about the opening procession. I haven't said much about the opening plenary, but it was I thought quite good. It was more absorbing, I thought, than some opening plenaries I've attended. The opening plenary, I think the chief characteristic of the opening plenary is that it's very long. Um, they're always very long. This one, the last one I remember attending was in the evening. And so when it became long, it became very long because it came after a full day. This one started in the morning. And I think because of that, people were more alert. They were more willing to wait out the entire program, although after the first few hours, the crowd started to thin. Um, there were the expected people, the members of the organizing body. There was a message from the governor of Illinois. The mayor of Chicago was present. A number of politicians were present. They spoke. And they spoke well. The mayor spoke well. The congressman spoke well. And then there were different faith leaders who spoke. And um, the point, I think, of the opening plenary is one, to give credit to those people who've organized the event, but also to kind of set the tone. And I thought this one did that very well. It sets a celebratory tone, but it also kind of sets the tone for um, what the focus of this particular parliament will be. And this one was fighting for freedom and human rights, fighting for freedom and defending human rights. And obviously, this is a time where that's very important. And I think we've remarked a couple of times that there are things we would have liked to have seen emphasized more than they were. For example, the subject of LGBTQ rights. But I think they did a good job within the context of all the disparate forces they're working with. And Kai in the chat room says there are many things that were great, many things that were okay, and many things that could be improved on. But that's the nature of holding a large-scale event. You know, that is so true. And so if I mention here and there something that could have been improved on, that's not a criticism, or at least not meant as a negative criticism. It's meant as an observation to improve the future. But this was a wonderful event, and they all really have been. Now, I will say that for me, I was always told what a transformative spiritual event this was. And then I went to my first one, and I found for myself it was a highly political event. But all those people who were having that very spiritual experience were going as people, and I was there as the head of an organization. And I still found it a spiritually uplifting event. But I did find that when you come in that position of heading a religious group, it's a different kind of event. You will find yourself dealing with things that the ordinary attendee does not, and that too is only to be expected. I will say for this parliament, I had, having retired from any active duties, I found that I could enjoy the parliament itself more than previously, and I would have to say that I did. And I think that was a very enjoyable aspect for me of this particular parliament, and I assume of any future parliaments that I may attend. I figure we'll see if, in fact, I do attend future parliaments. It will depend in part on when they're held, on how I'm doing, and all sorts of different questions, but I hope to attend some more. I am hopeful of many good things in the future. But the Parliament certainly is going forward. They have not announced where the next one will be, and probably won't for a while. They usually take their time. Partly because I think they need to see how the last one did before booking the new one. because the venue for the next parliament is going to want to know what they can expect. So I think they have to do some things before they can even nail down where that next one's going to be. I'm sure there are a number of candidates already in line, but I doubt that it's been finalized. So it'll be a little while before we hear where the next one will be. And it probably will not be in the United States, because this is an international gathering and they do try to move it around. It has been held, obviously, in the United States, in South Africa, in Australia, in Canada, in Spain. It's been held in a number of different places over the years. And I'm sure that it will be held in many more interesting ones. I'd love to see it held in India. But I think there is a feeling that that would make it difficult because of the infrastructure to do a convention of this size with this level of international attendance. I don't know if that's true, but that's what people have suggested to me. But I think India would be a lovely place to have it, a lovely place to go. I'd love to see it in Africa again. And hello to Lady Rain in the chat room, and she says, bring it back to South Africa. I would love to see them do that, actually. I think that would be a wonderful thing, and South Africa absolutely does have everything they would need. I think bringing it to South Africa would be a very positive thing to do. And I would love to go back to South Africa. I've always enjoyed every visit there. I find the people very welcoming. I find, well, particularly I find Cape Town to be a charming and beautiful city with so much to offer. It reminds me very much of Chicago, actually. And I'm told that one of the reasons is that after the Chicago fire, when the city of Chicago was rebuilt, many of the architects who worked on it then went to work in Cape Town, which was having a major building episode at that time. And that there is a physical resemblance in part for that reason. But, you know, it's just a beautiful place to be. And Kai says, Oberon said Singapore. I would have to say I'm up for a visit to Singapore. Yeah, but Singapore would be a lovely place. And if they chose to put it in Singapore, that would be interesting. But I'm not entirely sure that there might not be political considerations that would make that difficult. One of the things you have to bear in mind is that this is such an international gathering that they have a lot of international politics to consider in choosing a location. Obviously, the People's Republic of China is not taking part in the Parliament of the World's Religions. And Tibetan Buddhists and other Buddhists do. But that tends to be, if anything, a cause of friction with the Chinese government, which makes me think Singapore might be an unlikely choice, but, you know, it would be a lovely place to be. And Kaiden says, just now I've begun to save for the next parliament, wherever it may be. And yes, that's a good idea. Because wherever it will be more expensive than where it was this time for those of us in the US. But that's one of the reasons they move it around, because whatever country it's in, it's expensive for many people who come there. And they try to make sure it's not expensive on the same people every time. And I think that's a very worthy goal on their part. I also think it's lovely to be exposed to these different geographical places and their different cultures. And Lady Rain says, we should all save Kai. And yeah, absolutely. It's been my experience with Arkwellians anyway, that when someone goes to Parliament once, they usually want to come back the next time. And it's kind of addictive in that way. It's an experience unlike any other. And I hope that you've been enjoying Pagan World coverage of Parliament. There is certainly more coming. And it will give you some feeling of what it's like to be there. But there's also so much more that that you experience when you're there in person. And nothing can really replicate the energy of it all. It's just a wonderful experience. And there's also the question, does it achieve the purposes it sets out? When you look at the things that Parliament has focused on, have they advanced in the world in this 30 years that the modern Parliament has been happening? And I think it depends in part on which roles you're talking about. If we're talking about acceptance of diverse religions and people becoming exposed to religions other than their own in a positive way, I think the Parliament has been incredibly successful. In the 130 years it's been around, that first Parliament in 1893 was very transformative to the American religious landscape. In particular, Buddhism and Hinduism became much better known in this country than previously, even though I believe both have been here since the very beginning of the country. But it was the first exposure for many people to what these religions actually teach, what they're about. And many other minority religions had a huge boost from that event, even though I've heard it said that that was not the purpose of that first Parliament, that the Christian organizers of that first Parliament actually thought that this was going to be a great proselytization occasion for themselves, but it did not work that way. It did quite the opposite, and in fact did what the Parliament said it wanted to do, which was exposing people to different viewpoints in a positive way. And I think that in the 30 years of the modern Parliament, it has worked very, very well on that front in particular. And I think that it's also, the modern Parliament has had a huge focus on issues like climate change. And has it been equally successful there? Well, it's hard to say. I think it has been in some places and not in others, but that's to be expected when you're working with the whole world. I do think the light that they shine on those issues is very important. The Parliament has been increasingly focusing on women's issues. And, it kind of seems like the world is going backward in that area. So I'd have to say that, well, I don't know if I could say the Parliament has been successful in moving forward issues of women's rights. The fact that they do continue to put a focus on that is more important than ever. And I certainly hope to see them continue to do that. As for this Parliament and the focus on freedom and human rights, well, I guess we'll see what happens as we go forward. I hope that it has had an effect. I always talk about the importance of the Parliament. And hello to Ravenwolf in the chat room. Hello to Sir Ed in the chat room. But one of the important aspects of the Parliament is that the people who come to it are, for the most part, those who come from other countries, whichever country the Parliament might be held in. They tend to be religious leaders in their own countries. In some cases, quite large religious leaders, in others, just local community leaders. And everyone who comes tends to be the sort of person who influences local opinion, and sometimes national opinion. So I hope that they came away from this Parliament with a commitment to defending human rights and fighting for freedom, because they are the people who can make a difference to that. And I think, it sometimes feels like the world has gone crazy in the last 10, 20 years, and that people have lost their sense of proportion. And I don't think that's really true. I think if you look at history, a lot of people never had a sense of proportion. and that we were kind of fooling ourselves that this had changed. I think every now and then this happens. But let us say that that we do see it very clearly now that for certain people, understanding the difference between disagreement and oppression seems to be difficult. Understanding the difference between discussion and division seems to be difficult. I'm hoping that events like this can help people to regain their sense of perspective, their ability to discourse civilly, and to advance these issues, whether it's working with climate, working with women's rights, working with human rights, and all of these come really under human rights, that we can go forward in a positive way and do this in a civil manner. And that those people who came to Parliament were positively impressed with the need to do so. And if so, then I would say that Parliament was a great success. Of course, we're not going to see that overnight. Nothing like that happens overnight. All of these things are long marches. And we have to be prepared for a long march. But most of us in the pagan community have already been on a long march in our own community, in the world, for our own recognition. So we should understand what that means. We should understand the idea of working for the future in the present. And I think that really is what the Parliament is doing. There's a saying that Sir Edward often refers to, that a wise person plants fruit trees that will never bear fruit in their lifetime, because they know that this will be a blessing to the future. I certainly have not done justice to relating it, but that's the idea. And it's not always what you yourself can reap the benefit of, but improving the world itself. And for those of us who believe in reincarnation, which I would imagine many people watching this broadcast do, building that better world isn't just for our descendants, because we'll be our own descendants. It's also for us. And we of all people should be mindful of making sure we have a good world to return to. And I hope that we all are. With that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. So let us have our prayer, as we do each day, and we will go forward into the world. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we come to you this day with thanks and love for all that you do in our lives. And we ask you to help us to be mindful of that future, which we will not see in these bodies, but will see in other forms. Help us to build a better world for our descendants and also for ourselves when we return to it. Help us to remember that this is not a disposable world, nor is it one that we can simply walk away from, for we shall return to it. And help us, therefore, to take good care of it and to improve it for what comes after us. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you. We know you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I'll see you tomorrow.